From talking his way out of a cartel enforcer with wire cutters in the desert, to faking an entire Louisiana town to keep his bodyguard out of prison, here's every time Saul Goodman lied, or, well, almost every lie. At least, those who saved his ass. Starting with the desert with Tuco. Jimmy McGill has accidentally sent two skateboarding con artists into the home of Tuco Salamanca, one of the most violent and unpredictable cartel enforcers in all of Albuquerque. The twins immediately sell Jimmy out the second Tuco gets in their faces. Minutes later, all three of them are bound, gagged, and in the back of a van headed to the New Mexico desert. And Tuco has wire cutters. He is picking a finger to start with. So what does Jimmy do? He tries the truth first.
Hey, no, I'm a lawyer. Just reach in my pocket right now.
Tuco doesn't buy it. So Jimmy immediately switches lanes and tells Tuco he's an undercover FBI agent running a federal operation called Kingbreaker. And here's what's brilliant about that specific lie. He doesn't just say he's FBI. He tells Tuco the entire operation is named after him. That the federal government of the US considered Tuco Salamanca important enough to dedicate an entire task force to bringing him down. Guys, Tuco is a paranoid egomaniac. Jimmy spotted that in about 45 seconds flat. He gave Tuco exactly what a man like that needs to hear, that he matters, that he's feared at the highest levels of law enforcement. Tuco lights up immediately, but Nacho, the smarter man in the room, starts asking specific questions and poking holes. Jimmy doesn't know anything about Tuco's actual operation. The FBI story collapses fast, so Jimmy drops it immediately without blinking and goes straight back to the truth. This time, Nacho vouches for him.
You really see the FBI hiring those two flaquitos?
Killing a lawyer brings too much heat, and then Jimmy is freed. Then, and this is the part that really shows you who this man is, he doesn't just run. He turns back around and negotiates for the twins. He knows Tuco is devoted to his grandmother, so he reframes mercy as justice.
Way I see it, that's because you're tough, but you're fair. You're all about justice.
He talks Tuco all the way down from 3 murders to 2 broken legs. Jimmy walked into that desert as a dead man and walked out as a lawyer who just saved 3 lives using nothing but his mouth. Craig Kettleman, a county treasurer, has embezzled over $1 million and skipped town with his family. Jimmy finds them, knows they're guilty, and knows the money is sitting right there. The problem is, the Kettlemans don't want Jimmy as their lawyer. They've already decided to go with Hamlin's firm, and Jimmy has no leverage to make them keep him. So he doesn't ask them to hire him, he reframes the math. Jimmy points out that if the Kettlemans simply keep the stolen money, it's evidence of a crime. But if they hand a chunk of it to him as a legal retainer, then that portion isn't stolen cash anymore. It's a legitimate payment for legal services.
I can't take a retainer.
He turns their guilt into his fee. They get to feel like they're protecting themselves, and Jimmy walks away paid by the very people who refused to hire him. It's one of the purest examples of early Jimmy logic. He doesn't have a winning position, so he invented a frame where the other side's worst problem became the reason to pay him. Nobody was threatened, nobody was conned in the traditional sense, and he just rearranged the truth until handing him money looked like the smart move. Hamlin forces Jimmy to take down a commercial he made, leaving him with no clients and no way to get attention, so Jimmy doesn't ask for attention, he manufactures it. He hires a young worker to hang off the side of a tall billboard as if his harness has failed, dangling there in apparent danger while a film crew Jimmy brought along just happens to be rolling. Then Jimmy climbs up and rescues him on camera. The footage hits the local news. Jimmy goes from a nobody who got his ad pulled to a heroic local lawyer who saved a man's life, and the phones start ringing. Nobody was in danger. The whole thing was staged from the first second. Jimmy didn't fight Hamlin for the spotlight, he just built his own and made the public hand it to him. Okay, now we're in Breaking Bad. Jesse and Walt have kidnapped Saul at gunpoint and dragged him out to a freshly dug hole in the desert. They think he's been talking to the DEA about their operation. They are actively deciding whether or not to kill him. The first thing Saul does is run a completely preloaded script.
Oh, no, 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 no! No, it wasn't me. It was Ignacio. He's the one.
He immediately starts pointing blame at someone else because in his line of work, cartel guys showing up in the middle of the night is a scenario he has literally planned for in advance. This man has a contingency for being kidnapped at gunpoint. Let that sink in. But then Walt starts coughing, and Saul recognizes that cough. He had met Badger's uncle in his office earlier that same day. He connects the dots in seconds. These aren't cartel guys. They're scared amateurs. And scared amateurs have a problem that he can probably solve. The moment he figures that out, the entire dynamic flips. He asks them to hand him $1, attorney-client privilege, and stops being a hostage.
First things first, you're gonna put $1 in my pocket, both of you.
He becomes a consultant. He doesn't promise to protect Badger. He doesn't argue about the gun still pointed at him. He tells about Jimmy In-N-Out Kill Kelly, a career criminal who has spent 44 of his 58 years behind bars and goes to prison professionally for money. A ready-made fake Heisenberg for the DEA to arrest. Problem solved. Guys, he walked into that desert as a man about to be executed. He walked out as their lawyer. The man who dug that hole for him were now his paying clients. That's not luck, that's a different category of human being entirely. This one is different. No guns, no desert, but arguably the most important lie on this entire list for Jimmy's future. Jimmy is facing a bar disciplinary hearing where Chuck McGill, his own brother, and one of the most respected attorneys in Albuquerque, is the star witness against him. Chuck has real evidence. Jimmy broke into his house and tampered with legal documents. The facts are not on Jimmy's side. So Jimmy doesn't fight with facts, he destroys the witness. Before the hearing, Jimmy had Huel Babineau, a pickpocket he recently hired, bump into Chuck on the courthouse stairs and slip a fully charged cell phone battery into Chuck's breast pocket without Chuck feeling a thing. Now, here's the key. Chuck suffers from electromagnetic hypersensitivity. He genuinely believes electronic devices cause him physical pain. His condition is psychosomatic, but Chuck doesn't accept that. During the hearing, Jimmy has everyone remove all electronics from the room to accommodate Chuck. Chuck is calm, composed, and completely credible as a witness. Then, during cross-examination, Jimmy pulls a cell phone from his own pocket. Chuck correctly guesses the battery has been removed. Confident, composed, then Jimmy asks him to reach into his own breast pocket.
Could you reach into your breast pocket and tell me what's there?
Chuck pulls out the fully charged battery that has been sitting next to live electricity the entire hearing, and Chuck felt absolutely nothing. And then Chuck snaps. He delivers a furious, uncontrolled outburst listing every crime Jimmy has ever committed. His voice rising, his composure completely gone, right in front of the entire committee. His ex-wife Rebecca, who came to support him, watches in stunned silence. Jimmy never lied on the stand. He never fabricated a document. He engineered a situation where Chuck dismantled his own credibility live, in real time, in front of every person in that room whose opinion mattered. The result? A 12-month suspension instead of full disbarment. For actually breaking into his brother's house and forging legal documents, that outcome is almost miraculous. Okay, this one is one of the most creative lies in the entire series, and it doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Huel, Jimmy's pickpocket for hire, is working security for Jimmy's burner phone business when a cop orders them to move along. Huel can't hear what's happening because he's wearing headphones, thinks Jimmy is being attacked, and knocks the officer out cold with a bag of sandwiches. To make things worse, the cop recognizes Huel from a prior arrest for pickpocketing. The prosecutor now wants up to 2.5 years. Huel is terrified of going back to prison. Kim tries the legitimate route, which is filing motions, presenting comparisons to how similar cases were handled, and the prosecutor won't budge. So Jimmy puts together a con so elaborate, it's almost beautiful. He gets on a bus headed to Huel's hometown of Coshutta, Louisiana. During the ride, he pays fellow passengers to help him write fake letters vouching for Huel's character. Different pens, different handwriting styles, different voices, each one making Huel sound like a beloved pillar of his community. Jimmy even makes sure some letters include phone numbers, and when Jimmy arrives in Coshutta, he mails the entire stack from the local post office so they carry a genuine Louisiana postmark and head straight back to Albuquerque. Then he sets up a fake church website for the Kashada congregation, listing Huel as a community hero, and arms his film crew with burner phones to answer calls. When the prosecutor's office tries to verify the letters and starts dialing the numbers, they reach Jimmy's people doing full Southern accents, inventing stories about Huel saving elderly parishioners from a burning building. The judge receives the mountain of letters, calls both sides in, and asks the prosecutor why she's going after what he calls, essentially, a community saint. He orders her to make a deal. Huel walks away with 4 months probation. Jimmy faked an entire town of supporters, a church, a pastor, and a legacy, and it worked perfectly. This is the one where the lie barely holds. Saul had gone into the desert to retrieve $7 million in cash from Lalo's bail. He was ambushed by a crew that was hired by Juan Bolsa, which he survived only because Mike was there and spent a full night stranded in the desert before hiking out. Mike drills a cover story into him before they part ways. Simple. Car broke down, walked out alone, nobody else was involved. Then Lalo shows up at Jimmy and Kim's apartment.
Hey, guys!
At night, unannounced. He sits down on their couch completely calm and asks Jimmy to walk him through what happened, then asks him to do it again. Then again. Saul holds the story, but guys, he is visibly shaken in a way we almost never see from him, because Lalo is not Tuco. He's not emotional or impulsive, he's patient, methodical, and smart enough to know that a man who just survived what Saul survived should probably be more rattled than he's letting on. Lalo keeps circling the same details, pressing the same moments, waiting for a single crack. And that's when Kim steps in. Without any preparation, without a rehearsed line, she turns on Lalo directly.
Are you kidding me with this?
Jimmy nearly died out there retrieving that money. He's sitting in his own home, being interrogated after doing everything Lalo asked of him. And this is the gratitude he gets. She is genuinely furious, and it does show. Lalo wasn't prepared for Kim. He had accounted for every move Saul might make, but he had not mapped her as a variable. Her authentic anger broke his rhythm, and he left. The cover story held, but Saul needed help to get it across the finish line, and that tells you something important about where the ceiling is. Alright, this is the final one, and it's the most audacious thing Saul ever did. And he did it from inside a jail cell. After years living as Gene Takovic in Omaha, Jimmy is finally caught. He's brought back to Albuquerque facing a federal indictment that includes 27 RICO counts, distributing narcotics, money laundering, complicity in multiple murders, and the total potential sentence is life plus 190 years. The government offers him a deal: plead guilty, get 30 years. Jimmy is not interested in 30 years. He calls his old courthouse rival Bill Oakley and hires him as advisory counsel while representing himself. When Oakley asks where Jimmy sees this ending, Jimmy says, and this is absolutely real,
With me on top, like always.
He then does something extraordinary. In the meeting with the federal prosecutors with Marie Schrader, Hank's widow, watching directly, Jimmy launches into a performance. He describes being kidnapped at gunpoint in the desert by Walter White, being threatened and coerced, being a man who acted out of fear for his life. He plays the victim beautifully, convincingly, right to the prosecutor's face. He then tells them the one thing the government cannot ignore.
Still, juries, right?
He can deadlock a jury. All he needs is one juror who believes him, and looking at that performance, guys, you believe him. The government blinks. They negotiate the sentence all the way down from 30 to 7.5. Jimmy McGill, facing life plus 190 years, talked the federal government of the United States into giving him 7.5. And then, this is the part nobody saw coming, he blew it up himself on purpose. He had maneuvered under false pretenses to get Kim into that courtroom, and the moment he saw her sitting there, he changed his mind about everything. He stood up in front of the judge, contradicted his own testimony, admitted he had been a willing and enthusiastic participant in Walter White's empire, calling himself indispensable, and confessed to everything. Walter White couldn't have done it without me. He received 86 years. The 7.5-year deal was gone. He walked onto the prison bus knowing he would almost certainly die inside. But here's what's wild about that final moment. Even the confession was calculated. He had lied to get Kim into that room. He had chosen the moment deliberately. He had decided exactly what he wanted that act to mean and who he wanted to witness it. The last thing Saul Goodman ever did was tell the truth, and he planned it just as carefully as every lie that came before it. So, what does it all add up to? Every single time Saul Goodman was in real trouble, facing death, disgrace, disbarment, or a life behind bars, he got out of it the same way. He read the room. He found the gap between what the person across from him needed to believe and what was actually true. And he built a story in that gap so fast and so precisely that nobody could catch him. Tuco needed to feel powerful, Walt and Jesse needed a solution, the bar committee needed sincerity, the federal prosecutors needed to believe they might lose. Every lie was tailor-made for its target. The content didn't matter. The emotional target always came first. The crazy thing is that every single one of those skills, the people reading, the pressure thinking, the storytelling, he could have used them to become something legitimate. The show understood that better than anyone. The tragedy of Jimmy McGill isn't that he was a bad man, it's that he was capable of being a great one, and he chose the easier version instead. But what do you think? Was Jimmy McGill always going to end up here? Or was there a moment where things could have gone differently? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more breakdowns like this one, the next video is right there. Don't miss it.